Gail, I want to talk about a day in the life of an Alzheimer's patient and the caregiver. So there are 5 stages, thereabouts, for Alzheimer's. Do 3 stages, beginning, middle, and end, of what a day is like.
Okay. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, sometimes people aren't even diagnosed. Their behavior might be starting to change, but people don't know why. But at some point in the early stages, there's usually a diagnosis. And a person may be able to be independent at home, but they need someone kind of watching out to make sure they're getting enough to eat and drink, and that their, bills are being paid and their medication is being taken. And so someone to kind of look over and maybe, see them a couple times a day and make sure that things are still going okay and the hygiene is going okay. Because there would be some gradual loss of function in those areas. As the stages move on, there's a lot more decrease in the person's level of functioning. They might not be able to cook for themselves anymore. They might need cueing and a lot more help with their hygiene. They might become incontinent and have to wear, some kind of product for incontinence. The sleep might be disturbed. There could be some wandering. There could be some behavior changes, unusual things like, getting out of a car, as a passenger, or even sometimes aggression, because people become frustrated with the changes. They can feel that things are different and they get frustrated.
I also think they hurt.
Physical pain, yeah. And then, of course, as things progress even more, the person is at this point probably requiring 24-hour care and needing more physical care, maybe feeding, or definitely help to get the food, to them. Hygiene help, bathing. There might be falls, so they might need somebody to walk with them to make sure that they're not falling. So there's a decline physically. And then, of course, towards the very end, there is the final dying process, which is usually fairly short, but sometimes people can be bedridden for quite a while.
And they are in bed totally.
Generally, not always. I mean, there are differences between people, but some people can be bedridden for quite a while.
Now, what would you say would be the safety tips that you could help a caregiver? Because I know there's, cars involved, and I remember the doctors telling us that we should put the knives away. And it's very difficult to hide your knife and to cook and to have your husband, who has always been in the kitchen with you, when you're pulling your knife out of your hidden area. So
Right.
I didn't figure that one out.
I think that does vary a lot from person to person. I've seen some people who can actually participate and help with cooking with somebody there with them. But I would say, in general, it is a good idea to put things that could be used improperly away, because a person's judgment is decreasing over the time that they have the disease. So they might not physically be coordinated enough to use a knife. They might get the idea that they can do it themselves. Things like the stove. You don't want someone preparing meals for themselves when they've lost the judgment to do that.
Sharp scissors.
And sharp scissors. But again, if you're doing something with someone and you're right there, you can gauge what their coordination is like and what their judgment is like and their mood. Driving, that's a very tough one. Some people figure out ways to sort of finesse that and hide the keys or disable the vehicle if that car isn't needed for the family. They might make it so that car doesn't run. Some people are able to accept that they just no longer drive, but sometimes they forget. They may have accepted it early on, but then they forget. So you do have to make sure that the person isn't going to be able to go out and get in the car.
Well, you remember the trouble we had with Glenn in the car. I could not take him alone because he was always trying to get out of the car. He didn't understand at the end why he was confined in the car. So that makes it a dangerous situation.
Yeah. There are some cars now that have, like the child-proof locks that lock all the doors except the driver's side. But it gets upsetting to the person too when they don't understand that.
Right. Anything else you would like to say, Gail, that would help someone on this, either coping with the disease or helping someone cope?
Well, just one more thing on safety. You want to make sure that things are visually clear, because people don't understand what they're seeing sometimes. So you want to make sure that things are well lit and that there isn't a lot of clutter, so that the person can sort of understand what's in their environment better and not think that they're seeing something that they're not.
Well, there are hallucinations with Alzheimer's.
There are
in some
hallucinations, and also just where people think that something, you know, like a dark object on the floor, they think it's a cat, or, you know, they misinterpret things. So the better the lighting and the clearer things are, the better.
I'm glad we have people such as yourself that help us
Oh,
get through this.
well, thank you. I'm glad everybody's working together to try to make things better with this disease.